All right, so let me introduce, kind of set up what we're doing. So we're going to start recording. So you are all educators as of this moment to each other for this next hour and a half. It's a roundtable, meaning that although we've given you some topics, some questions to go with the topics, we really want this to flow. This is conversation amongst us. This is 90 minutes of really great experience combined with people who are learning to talk about rehabilitation, injury prevention, and ergonomics delivered together or in some combination. And what's going on out there? What are we all doing? And how can we empower each other to reach for greater things? And so I authored an article that brought in 7 great experts in rehab management last month, I guess it was October, and 3 of them are here, so that's really cool. But Miss Alison Heller-Ono, who I'm going to let her introduce herself, agreed to moderate our conversation. And I thought, so many of you are used to my voice. You've all, not all of you, but many of you have heard me in courses and so forth. And Alison is an expert, as are many of you, who is also an educator, as are many of you. But she volunteered and agreed, bless you, Alison, to lead us in this discussion. So I'm a participant in just a few minutes, just like everybody else, to engage and share with you all as not only the CEO of DSI, but as a physical therapist doing a lot of on-site services over the course of my career too. So with no further ado, I am going to turn it over to you, Alison, to lead us out in this roundtable discussion.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet everybody here. It's great to be here. I just got back from vacation Saturday, so I'm trying to get my brain around ergonomics and back to work. And this is a great way to kick it off. You guys are going to, I think we're going to be able to have a really engaging discussion. So thanks, Ginny, for the invitation. And let me just tell you a bit about myself. If you haven't heard of Worksite International, I've been in business, that is my company, since 1993. So I am the longest employer I've ever had. I practiced in the clinic. I got my master's in 1987 and worked in the clinic till about 1995 and went full-time into ergonomics around that time. So I really have not done much clinical PT, outpatient ortho, which is where the last position I had as a work health clinic director, doing functional capacities and job analysis and work job task matching and things like that, which is many of the things that are very popular for many of you right now. So, but I made a choice in 1993 to focus on ergonomics. And when I barely really knew what it was, I just knew that the patients that I was seeing in the clinic were coming to us with work injuries, and every time I saw them for their initial evals, I would ask, how did you get hurt at work? And they would explain the scenario, and then I would ask how their employer had helped to prevent it, or was their employer doing anything to help them get back to work? And the answer was always, they didn't know how to work safely. Their employer didn't provide any training or education on safe work practices and, safe work procedures and things. And return to work was a challenge for many of them. Fast forward now 30 years, I can't say things have changed that much, right? The problem is still the same. Employers still have work injuries. Many of them don't have any safety policies or working policies where responsibility is shared between employee and employer. And so My journey has been one of very robust nature to embed myself into ergonomics, to be certified as an industrial ergonomist, and then a certified professional ergonomist, but still maintain my PT license because the knowledge is forever and forever valuable in this role. So I have a training academy and I do certify people, but today what I want to do is learn a little bit about you guys with that overview. So I'm very interested to learn more about each of you. So if we could just do maybe a few minutes like I did, maybe 5 minutes or slightly less, 2 minutes, about yourselves and just how you are combining rehab, your clinic responsibilities with injury prevention and ergonomics, if you're doing that or if you're not and you want to. So let's start with Callie. If you can turn your video on, Callie, that would be great. We'd love to see you. Here you go. Yeah, everybody, if you could all turn your videos on, it would be really a much more engaging conversation to be able to see our expressions and share a little bit. So please, Callie, go ahead and proceed. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your clinic and your interests.
So I am Callie. I have been actually working in industry for last few months, so kind of brand new to working in an industrial setting. So this is kind of my first little pick into a little bit more ergonomic learning and kind of collaboration. And we'll be doing the DSI training next month. So this is just, again, kind of the first hey, here's some information that might be helpful for me. So.
Excellent. And when you say that you're new, so you've had just a couple months of exposure, what's your biggest takeaway right now from your perspective of what you feel you really need to know to bring value to your employer clients? I'm
working in a factory that does a lot of painting, uses a lot of paint line, a lot of different sized parts. They're working to improve the workstation heights, table heights, and the paint line is for shorter individuals a little bit more difficult to get parts on and off. So we're seeing more shoulder impingement. And then in a different setting, where folks use hand tools to drill parts, they are experiencing a lot more lateral epicondylitis and stuff like that. So just trying to help bring more to the table as far as preventing some of those injuries, or just giving them some tips and tricks to say, hey, hold this piece of equipment this way instead of that way. So.
Okay, good. Have you had some successes?
Yes. Yeah. Our team is definitely just even some of those little tidbits. They do have communication screens that are throughout the plant. So we can even just post a little flip of, hey, here's a picture of a stretch or of a different way to hold a piece of equipment, and add that the whole team can see that. So
great. Well, let's hold that, because we'll probably talk a little bit more about how you can develop strategies and help companies that you're working with. So let's go ahead to Christine. What's OSF, Christine? Tell us about you.
OSF is OSF Healthcare. We are a large hospital system, mainly in Illinois, but we do have one hospital in Escanaba, Michigan. And I'm a physical therapist by background. This is my 17th year treating, but prior to my leadership role, I was not doing anything industrial rehab. And so as we are growing a little bit our IR program, as well as our scope of services, I'm just hopping on to soak it all up and just know how to best support that service line and clinicians. And we have a highly seasoned clinician who will be retiring in a couple years. So I need to be able to speak the business and but luckily we have an IR supervisor to help me with that. So I'm really just here to learn more about IR to grow and support clinicians and customers.
That's wonderful. So with that large hospital system and in your role, tell me, between you and your supervisor, how many opportunities you get to meet with leadership about improving and reducing injuries for the hospital system. I imagine that's what you're doing. You're focusing on internal people or the community?
We're very heavily community-based.
So none of your services are being used internally?
I mean, some. Is there opportunity? Yes. Are we ready for that growth? I'm not sure I can answer that right now, given our current staffing model. But we do have like an ergonomics portal where leaders can submit requests based on a mission partner, which are our employees, an employee request or need or return to work because of an injury or illness. So we do support that on an as needed basis. I wouldn't say we've gone out and done things on a preventative basis. If that becomes a need, we would be able to work through that. But we have a lot of clients that reach out and need us to come and do some on-site ergonomic assessments, job analyses, those type of things.
Well, that's fabulous that you support the community, but I can assure you that OSF needs your help just as much as the community does.
I'm sure they can, but we need to take care of those community clients. Need to make sure we have time to do that.
They're paid clients, right? So they come first.
So while we understand that importance, we are there as needed, but it is not a focus at this time of our growth.
Yeah. And what about what industries are in your community?
We have State Farm, so that's like a big one. But we have a lot of factories. We have an automotive industry local to us.
Okay, so you do a little bit of office and industrial.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Christine. Thanks for joining us today. How about you, Brian, with a Y? Tell us a little about yourself, Brian, and you were in the article too. So,
yeah, that was kind of a fun little, I guess, precursor to this conversation, which was great. And thank you for having me on, Jenny. I appreciate it. I think I come perhaps with a little bit of a unique background in that I have dabbled in a lot over the years, and I don't know that I'm master of any, but I've certainly gained a lot of knowledge along the way. I'm Brian Grelich. First and foremost, I'm an athletic trainer. I was brought up in kinesiology, sports medicine, had a big passion for sports performance and injury prevention, returning my athletes into competition at all levels. I worked from, AYSO soccer and team gymnastics. I've been to college and took care of professional athletes over time as well. And I worked in a clinic for about 10 years doing sports medicine and physical therapy type work. And I happened to move into more of the management side of things, where I was working for a medical facility that had about 18 offices, about 120 physicians, and had 3 physical therapy clinics spread throughout the county, and was overseeing those operations for a few years, and then kind of was transitioning, not by choice actually, but it worked out well, to a local hospital system in Orange County. And through that work, I started in outpatient PT as well, still doing sports medicine stuff, and started dabbling in ergonomics when I was asked to do some assessments for our hospital-based caregivers. And around 1998, around that time, I started really working quite a bit in both injury prevention, ergonomics, safe patient handling, and actually was outsourced for a couple of years to run a injury prevention program at Disney.
So how about now, Brian? What are you up to now?
And so that just kind of brought me into, now I'm in a management role where I'm overseeing injury prevention, ergonomics, workers' compensation, and safe patient handling for a large hospital in the Palm Springs area. So,
and what do you see as the right now the most important or critical issue your programs are addressing for your clients?
Our biggest thing is just keeping our caregivers at work. This environment out in Palm Springs, it's a lovely place to visit, but to get people to settle down here and live here full time, constantly a staffing challenge. We have a lot of migrant visitors, but get people to stay here and really be embedded. It's a challenge. We have about 5,000 employees on staff, and so we're trying to maintain them in a good working environment. My practice is solely based on our internal clients. Right now, we don't do any job function testing or matching or injury prevention work on external clients. We're just taking care of ourselves. We have a large hospital facility and about 35 outpatient clinics and another 20 office type buildings that are supporting our mission here at Eisenhower. So it's a big task.
Yeah. So you're responsible for taking care of 5,000 employees, essentially.
Yeah, we've got about 5,800 employees plus medical students plus, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get back with some more discussion in a little bit. How about Tracy? Can you turn your video on and say hi to us and introduce yourself? Tell us what you're up to right now.
Well, I'm currently driving in my car back from one of my industrial sites. So unfortunately, you don't get to see my beautiful face today. My hair is down and I'm wearing a blue sweater, if that helps paint the picture.
Okay.
So, but I'm Tracy Toffner. Brian, nice to meet you finally. Jenny's talked a lot about you. I'm also an athletic trainer. I am the director of industrial medicine and wellness, and I work with Callie at Advanced Physical Therapy. My primary specialty is working with police officers and firefighters, but at Advanced, we see all types of industry from food processing to manufacturing to shipping and receiving to forging. We just don't work refinery. That's probably the only type of industry we're not in right now. And we're based out of Wisconsin. And so I'm very excited to be here. I do quite a bit of job analysis, job function testing, and then utilize the skill set in the manner that you described earlier, Allison, where there's a worker that's injured and then working backwards from there. How did they get injured? What type of practices are in place? And so at Advanced, we're trying to, I come to these because it's an opportunity to learn from a leadership position, how I can disseminate best practices down to my team. I've got about 35 individuals that are embedded into 60 plus industries in Wisconsin. And so making sure that they all have the tools they need to address prevention from the forefront, but also that reactive care when it comes to ergonomics as well. And so looking forward to this discussion with all of you today. Okay.
That's fabulous, Tracy. You have a lot of experience and a lot of depth there that you're offering. So thank you so much. I think, what's critical when we all interact with these employers is who are we interacting with and what do they know about what it is, the power of prevention and the skills and tools that we bring, because I really feel employers vastly underutilize our competencies. And the other problem is that they make them very commoditized and transactional, which limits our value. And it's up to us to change that perspective. And the only way you can do that is by talking with the financial decision makers and having all the data. So I'll just put that out there for now. And then Mr. Lacrosse here, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hey, there we go. Yeah, so my name is Brian Langenhorst, and my undergrad was in occupational therapy, and I've been a clinician for 35 plus years, mostly working within business and industry, industrial rehab, occupational health. I left healthcare for a bit and worked in the workers' compensation industry as a loss control consultant. So I managed about 28 companies in 42 locations, so their entire safety initiatives for their teams. I missed healthcare and came back to a freestanding OC Health facility. So it's I work in an Occ Health and Employee Health group. Our group, we have about 2 hospitals, 10 clinics, about 3,500 employees. About 30 years ago, I started a comprehensive safe patient handling program, which we do new employee orientation training for all of our employees that are new. They get 4 hours of training kicking off as a new employee. We have about 80 safe patient handling champs within our organization to keep that program going. And got one of my clinicians I work with. She's a safe patient handling professional certification, which is really great. Another gal, we started a comprehensive ergonomics control program internally, and she manages our internal ergonomics. And then I do most of the external ergonomics. So I'm in probably 300 companies on a pretty consistent basis. Our group, our Occ Health team, works with about 1,400 companies in 40 states. I usually write a lot of the function or the ADA compliant job descriptions, and then design function capacity valves from an Occ Health standpoint. I also,
Brian,
go ahead.
Tell me a little bit about some of the trends that you see. You have a lot of outreach, it sounds like, and a lot of depth. What are employers looking for right now?
Well, so I guess a couple things. So one of the things that, in addition to my medical and work background, I'm also a board certified ergonomist. So I kind of look at organizations pretty eclectically. And so one of the things that I'm doing within business and industry, I may come into an organization that may be just one-on-one for somebody from either return to work with my medical provider, or I've been in the community for a lot of years. So a lot of companies have me on speed dial to say, we're having a concern, folks have fatigue and discomfort, can you come in and help and manage that? So sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's department-wide, and sometimes it's facility-wide. But the majority of the groups that are really creating a lot of impact is I have a phased-in approach in which I'm gonna do a 3 to 5 years of work comp loss run trend report, so I know all their dollars associated with that. And then based on that trend report, I've got some historical data. I then set up and do facility-wide risk factor assessments. And then I do a 3-day leadership training for their entire leadership team, followed by facility-wide employee training. So outcome-wise, we've been able to consistently have six-figure improvements with organizations year in, year out. So, yeah.
That's fabulous that you were able to show the ROI. Let's talk a little bit more about that later. I still want to get through to a couple people here. Thanks so much, Brian. Sean, how about you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your interests in injury prevention and ergonomics and where you're at right now with that.
My name's Sean McGinn. I'm in OSF Healthcare with Christine. I'm the new supervisor of the industrial rehab services, but I just took over the position in the first part of October, so I'm still trying to get my feet wet a little bit, find out what everybody has kind of got to offer ministry-wide. So I'll be covering a lot of ground here over the next couple months in terms of finding out what clinics have what available, or what kind of clinicians are available for what kind of services. So, but I've been in industrial rehab for 16 years now, kind of my first love, and just stayed in it since graduating school. So just ready to kind of get things going here at OSF.
So what is your primary objective? Is it to identify your staff's strengths and then service the community, or interact with your customers? And can you explain a little further?
I think a little bit of both of those. really kind of find out, get a feel of what we have to offer people, kind of be the content expert to go to companies and see what they need or what we can provide them.
Okay. Excellent. And do you feel you have some limitations that you want to improve on yourself? And what might those be?
Well, in terms of limitations, I think it mostly is going to be staff, how we can keep staff and get them up and going with DSI and really have them feel comfortable in getting involved with companies and getting what they need. So I think that's the biggest limitation that we have right now. There's a lot of opportunity within our healthcare system and the companies we provide services for. So I think we have a lot of growth to go, but it's kind of up and coming for us still. So just to kind of see where we're at with everything.
So it sounds like the next 3 months or more, you're going to be focusing on a lot of information gathering and talking to people.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I want to start a whirlwind tour here this month.
Okay, wonderful. So it says 4 others on this little block, and I'm not sure who those 4 others are. Did I get everybody, Ginny?
I would say if you have not introduced yourself, unmute and say hi to Alison and she'll work you in. Nancy, I don't think we've heard from you, have we?
Nope, I'm on here. So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good. Nancy, yes. Please say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at with achieving your injury prevention and how you're working within the clinic environment.
All right. Well, I'm Nancy Bellendorf. I went to college with Brian Langenhorst, Slow Brian. So, been out for a while. And when I was in college, we had a visiting OT talk about industry. And so that's where I kind of developed my interest in that. After I graduated, I worked in a work hardening program. And it was during time that I would go and do job site visits. And that kind of morphed into doing more and more job site visits and less in the actual clinic. And took some ergonomic courses and started offering companies to do more ergonomics and injury prevention. We have some window manufacturers here in central Wisconsin in Medford. And there was some safety people that were just very interested in those on-site services. So when in 2004, I started my own company. I was working for a hospital and I started my own thing. So I'm still private practice. I don't have any employees. I do subcontract some people once in a while. And most of my services now are primarily early intervention and some ergonomics. It seems like the safety people I work with are really strapped for time. So having an on-site therapist or athletic trainer really benefits them. And I think it's that relationship that we develop together and helping them achieve their goal of reducing their injuries. So I have about 8 different companies that I go to on different time frames during the week or month, and business is booming. So it seems like when safety people leave their companies and they go to another company, that's how I get another referral, because the people that experience it, want more of the early intervention. I do some DSI job analysis. I don't have many companies that do post-offer testing right now. It seems like there's such a shortage of workers that it's more placement testing versus post-offer, because just about anybody they can get in the door they'd like to hire. So, but they do try to place people better. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm busy. I'm doing early intervention and more and more ergonomics. So.
Good. That's great.
Yeah.
So is your ergonomics focus in the office or industrial or both?
both. Tomorrow I'm doing a session at one of the companies I've been going to since the 90s. I'm still there. And they have a large office group, so we're doing a session on that. Then I'll be going one-on-one into their offices. And then I've got some manufacturing plants that we've been doing some job analysis, the human tech and different things that the different safety people, the programs they like to use. So they're having me very involved with that. And I think relationship building too is very important, to build relationships with the maintenance people, with the, the site engineers, and work together. It's that teamwork that's so important with these companies. So.
Yeah. The more we can engage them, the better our buy-in and our success is going to be, right? Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you. Are you driving? Or are you stationary?
I'm in my car, but I'm stationary in my car. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. It was so wonderful to have this just broad scope of people and all your experiences here. It's just fabulous to hear that everyone's been doing this quite some time. Which brings me to ask you, where do you see the opportunities or things you want to do that you're not able to do? What are some of those roadblocks? So does anybody want to, step up and talk a little bit about, frustrations that you have? I mean, it all sounds all rosy, but in reality, it's hard to get some of these things going. It's hard to get people to listen to us and drive change. So where are you at with some of that? If you don't mind, let's just go ahead and raise your hand or start speaking. Or Brian, you have some thoughts?
Brian with a Y.
Brian with a Y, and then Brian with an I.
What came to mind when you asked the question right now, Allison, was just supplies. It's like, we're doing a lot of great work and assessments out there and trying to provide our caregivers with kind of a standard accompaniment of ergonomic tools, and just getting our supplies in has been a challenge. I'm sure everybody's dealing with that right now. Is you need stuff, it's back ordered, it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out, and you wait for that date, biting your lips and hoping it comes in, and then it gets pushed out further. But so, just having the tools and products is a challenge right now, just as much as people, at least in this organization, wanting the services that we can provide. I think we've done a good job, and not just here, but in our industry over the last 10, 15 years, really making ergonomics something that is in the vocabulary of our workers. They understand kind of what that is, and are starting to understand some basics about what good ergonomics could be or should be, and learning how to apply it. And so just keeping up with them and their requests, that's been the next big challenge, is how we can integrate that in a standard way in an organization, provide the dexterity and versatility and tools that we offer, that it's not just give everybody a hammer and go to it. You give them different tools that really fit their needs. So that's the big challenge, is really keeping up on the breadth of equipment and tools that we can provide, the education that goes along with it, and helping people to realize that there are multiple ways of providing improvement, care, relief, rethinking workspaces, that type of thing. So
yeah. So that is around supply chain and purchasing and facilities. Do they give you pushback on? Are you personally selecting? Do you have a approved ergonomics purchase process, or like products that you have selected that are quality based that will work, and do purchasing or facilities usurp that and substitute with cheaper things that they can get?
Luckily, in my last two positions, my last job that I had for 20 years and this one that I've been in for about 2.5 months now, they've given me ability to just order what I need. Nobody's questioning the recommendations. It's just a matter of finding the right tools and being able to get them on site. So that's the nice thing. The budget hasn't always been an issue. The outcome is what allows me to continue to have the budget, because year after year we've shown hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of reductions in our workers' comp costs and retaining workers, getting people back into work, lost workday reductions, things like that. And when they're engaging the tools, the systems, the providers, all working together, they're like, yeah, everything's great, don't mess with it. Nobody seems to be giving a second look to what we're spending on ergonomic interventions, tools, manpower, because I have therapists out doing assessments and nobody's pushing back on that. It's just a balance of time and budget from that standpoint. Where's their time best used?
Yeah, so that's a challenge. So you have 5,800 employees, and on the average, how many evals are you doing a month internally?
We're probably seeing about, I know last month I just got my report from Chris. The two-person team saw about 68 people last month, along with their PT schedule. And they're still seeing patients, still doing fall prevention treatments and neuro stuff and all that, but they're fitting in ergo evaluations both on-site on our main campus and out at our ancillary facilities. And so they're really hopping and doing really great work.
Yeah, that's a lot of monthly. You're seeing that's a good volume there, about 800 to 1,000 people a year, and saving millions, which I'm sure your employer is happy with. So I know. Thank you so much, Brian with the Y. Brian with an I. You were gonna step up there when I mentioned. What are some of the limitations and problems that employers that you kind of struggle with to get them on board with?
Well, right now I know some employers that I'm working with, obviously for them to get new employees is going to be kind of a challenge. One of the groups I work with, they have actually 3 different employment agencies that they're bringing new hires in. So I do all their post-offer medicals to be able to get them in, but key is to be able to accommodate at a variety of hours. So I'll provide assessments anywhere from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Between myself and a colleague to accommodate for that. And the other thing that I notice that there are other clinics that I'm working with and or potentially some groups that are competition. And sometimes the challenges are that you may have some of the rehab team has a clinic or has a clinic practice, and to be able to get released from an FTE standpoint from a clinical setting to an outreach setting has been a challenge for some clinics and groups, and we've made it just part of our role to meet business and industry's needs. And again, I myself and my colleague, we work all 3 shifts to accommodate for them. And as a result, the employers within the region come to us first. And I think one of the key things, you have to approach business and industry a lot different than a traditional rehab setting, and think of it as approaching it, we approach it from a business model standpoint, and then, oh, by the way, we work in a hospital. And so I think by having that approach, it doesn't really require the employer to change kind of their normal course of business, because if they have to change normal course of business to bring your services in, they're not going to accommodate for that. Productivity and quality of their work is going to take over. So you have to become part of them, and every one of the employers are going to be very, very different. So you have to understand their culture and understand kind of what makes them click. And that's why by being able to create a lot of immersion with the employers, it breaks down barriers or challenges, and they may have a sense of what they want, but if you can do that trend report, you can do the risk factor assessment, you can really create a collaborative business plan with their team members. And as a group really kind of make a difference maker in business and industry.
Yeah, that's really a good approach. Is you have to meet them where they are, and they often, what I find is employers often think they know what they need, but they don't really know what they need. And, even though we are all, rehab professionals, we are really business consultants on process improvement and performance and well-being management and improvement strategies. And so, you can't come in with your, necessarily as a clinician at this point in these kinds of services. And that's where, having the opportunity to talk with leadership about our roles and not make it transactional or seeing us as a commodity, $85, a pre-employment test per person. It's really the entire strategy that's behind that, that what's the end game for them. And I think that sometimes when they're shopping for services, they are very focused on per person, per event or activity, and not really the big picture. So for you to have access to loss runs and stuff is fabulous, because I see a lot of times safety and HR are managed in silos, and maybe some of others can talk about this. Is you ask safety, do you know what your losses are, what you're spending on workers' comp? And they don't know, because HR is not willing to share that data with them. Have any of you, some of you working internally in some of these larger entities, do you get access to that so that you can talk about the extent of these problems or the effect that your roles are having? Anybody want to discuss that?
I'm going to point to Tracy. Tracy, you'd be a good share on that with your experience out there in industry.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. So we take an approach very similar to you, Allison, where we act more of a consultant than we do as a rehab professional until we get the services set. We try to really present people with a menu of services, and then based on their data analysis, very similar to what, Lacrosse, I can't remember your name. I think it's Brian. Yeah, okay. Brian and Allison kind of describes where we look at their workers' comp numbers. We focus specifically on musculoskeletal because we are a private practice. We're rehab, we're not hospital-based with other services there. But we focus primarily on those loss run reports. We look at their OSHA logs, we look at their days lost. I think all of those are really important metrics, because those are the metrics that are going to sing to the HR professionals and the CEOs. And then you can speak backwards on the OSHA logs, which are going to speak to safety professionals. So I do agree that coming in from the business mindset as a consultant first and a rehab professional second is kind of a positive way to look at industry and, again, speak the language of those that we are serving.
Great. Thank you for your insight there. So, Callie, since you're new, we want you to get a lot out of our conversation today. And so do you have any specific questions that you're thinking about that you'd like to ask us in this forum that we could assist you with? Go ahead and unmute. Yep.
Actually, I don't. Again, this was just kind of just to kind of get my feet wet. I didn't have any specific questions coming into this conversation, but definitely a wealth of information out there for me.
Yeah, so let's talk about reporting. Okay, I'm very curious about this. If you do an office assessment, first, how long does it take with an individual, and what kind of reporting are you providing back to the employer? Is it just a single checklist? Are you just providing recommendations, or are you providing, a multi-level report with lots of detail? Let's just, Sean, do you have a template or framework that you work in this area? If you don't feel comfortable answering, maybe one of the other folks can step up here.
We do have a template we work off of for our office ergonomics. Basically, it starts with a checklist with the problems that the person is having. And then we also provide recommendations on what should occur with their desk or setup or whatever they need, and then provide them with the actual recommendations of, so there's no question on what exactly do they want. It kind of helps take the middleman out of it, and the question of, is this the right equipment or not, kind of thing.
Yeah, so assessing for wants versus needs. So you just have to be careful with that. A lot of employers kind of don't want to have a wanted list, like, oh, she got this new chair, I want this new chair, right?
Yeah, we kind of run into that a lot, yeah.
So the provider, the evaluator, really needs to objectively assess and define whether that's necessary or not. So about how long, just on the average, is your assessment?
Really kind of depends on the problem list. For me, generally it's 20 to 30 minutes in terms of discussing what's wrong, what the recommendations are, and any questions or concerns that the person has with the recommendations. So. All
right. And is that assuming it's a preventive type evaluation?
No, these are usually pretty reactive is the problem also. We're trying to get it to where it's more preventative, but obviously there's some barriers with that. Yeah, a lot of it's reactive right now.
All right. How about you, Brian, and your group that did 68 employees a month? What's your process like, your evaluation process? Brian with the Y.
Get off mute there. So at this organization, at Eisenhower, the therapists have I'm thinking that most of their interactions, I haven't followed them on a lot of them, are running about 30 to 40 minutes. And they're taking a history, having a conversation, getting to know the person, getting their pictures. Their report is covering a pretty broad spectrum of stuff. And they're covering risk, repetition factors, and force factors related to the job, looking at postures and addressing contact stresses, vibration, all that kind of good stuff, getting anthropometrics on the people. And then they spent some time doing a biomechanical analysis, basically, and conversation, where they're providing education and training to the employee or the person they're working with about their work environment, their hazards, what tools and equipment they do have currently, what they're using well or versus adjustments they might need to make. And then they're putting together a report that probably ends up, in most cases, running about 4 to 5 pages, includes some basic pictures, gives a summary of their interaction with the employer or the caregiver, and then offering any recommendations if there's something that's needed, whether it is education or training or tools or things like that. So yeah, I would say they probably spend in all between an hour to an hour and a half on most assessments, and then there's some that might take much longer. And some of them, I know they can go on for weeks with touching base over and over again when you're looking at doing like whole department reworks and things like that. I'm really big on, and this is a great thing in healthcare, at least the last few years, they've really come to understand what like Six Sigma type protocols are, and looking at working in more efficient ways and taking a lean from industry and how we're looking at the type of work we do. So there's times that we're really looking at that and spending time with it.
Sounds like a good comprehensive process. What I've done it over my experience is offer a variety of levels of intervention, and from an initial screen, which is about 30 to 40, to a preventive eval, which is maybe 60, to work comp medical only, which is what I call level 2, which is about 75 to 90 minutes. Then level 3, which includes functional limitations and a very comprehensive, the same as the medical only, but you're adding more of a functional analysis as well of what they can do and can't do. Level 3s are probably around 2 hours, and then an ADA reasonable accommodation. So we've structured our evaluation programs like that. And it's had a lot of success in that way for how many of you do work comp ergo evals where you're being paid by the insurance provider for that service? Just show of hands. Anybody doing that?
Well, we're
Right.
self-insured, so
Okay. Yeah.
we're doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And certainly, if you're self-insured, then you've got to pay for all those claims. So that turns that money is well spent then, So Brian, with an eye, do you do work comp ergonomic assessments for insurers or pretty much?
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of relationships with insureds just by working in the work comp industry,
That's right.
So they'll pull me in from a post-injury standpoint, but they also I've been able to do a lot of prospecting with them, and I'm actually set up as their loss control consultant for a lot of the groups that aren't full service insureds. So it'll be a combination of preventative and post-injury care with the insureds that I work with.
Okay.
And internally, we have a self-referral system. My colleague and I get an email, so anybody, either an employee can request an ergo assessment, their supervisor can, or their physician can, and they come directly to our email account. We set up the visit and kind of go from there. And we do probably at least 500 a year internally, and then I'm interacting with maybe 3,000 people externally a year. So
That's wonderful. How about you, Nancy? Are you benefiting from that type of referral source, or are you pretty much focused on prevention and going on site?
Yes, I am. I had to unmute. I do some work comp work as well. So there's some local physicians that are aware of the DSI process, and so going in to get more objective measurements of the job and look at ergonomic opportunities, and then do some job function testing with those folks. So that is another opportunity, out in industry. And I find too, when I'm in this industry and I'm coming up with some ergonomic opportunity ideas, that one of my realizations or frustrations, but it's really actually more of an opportunity too, is the companies and the safety people I work with are so busy that when I make a recommendation, sometimes it's hard for the company to, get that follow through. So by giving the company more information or giving them, resources, or, finding out, can I work with the maintenance person or the engineer? Can I help, almost be like a part of that company, a part of that process of almost being an employee there, but I'm not. I'm a consultant. But so there's a lot of different avenues we can take when we're in that industry and working so closely with them.
That's one of the things I love about this work is when you have a good client and they're open and like what you're doing for them, there's no limit to our creativity to be able to help them and extend our service offerings, depending on, what you see and what you experience. So it sounds like you've been able to do that, which is great, and it really builds your value for them. So I see, Tracy, you got your hand up. You want to talk a little bit? Speak up. So, Callie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experiences? Has it been mostly positive, or have you had any thing that you didn't feel so comfortable with, or would like to be able to help you a little further since you're new at this, any way we can?
I guess, in which way are you?
Oh, well, let's see. Interacting with supervisors, you see any pushback from them about things that you think would help employees? When you notice when employees are using hand tools that don't fit so well, or the work environment's not set up very effectively to support shorter stature individuals, or those and the changes that you see that will require some cost and investment. How are you getting that message across, and is it received positively, or do you see that they're only willing to do like low-hanging fruit type things and mostly pushing things back on the employees, like, well, you can stretch to relieve your pain, or stand on this anti-fatigue mat and that'll do it.
Yeah, actually, our safety coordinator is pretty awesome, and he's on top of a lot of things. I mean, it's an older, lots of older things that we're seeing, older equipment, things that are like, well, this has been here for years, or this is just how it's been for years. And they actually did get a new drill tool that they're implementing. So it's kind of cool that they're able to reach out to certain other companies to be like, hey, we need a tool that would do this, but you still need to be able to plug or to drill, but it has a lot more. I'm not explaining myself very well, but the safety director is helping initiate, like, hey, we're going to try this, but I don't always hear that, which is kind of a bummer. So we had a meeting the other day and I said, hey, if you do start to get these new pieces of equipment, like, include me in on, so I can maybe even come check it out, and share that with the rest of our industry folks. But as far as like certain tables, certain departments, it just won't fit, or it's not in the budget, or, we see a lot of that, of course. We have had certain individuals with like low back problems that they just can't reach low into one of the boxes. So they were able to put it on an elevating cart. So there are a lot of different things that we can do. It's just a matter of, if someone's new, getting their station set up to their height. We did have one individual that was in an office who had some shoulder pain, but it was basically, he was leaning all day. So it's just kind of certain things like that where, just education, early intervention type things that we can, again, we have stretching handouts. And as I mentioned earlier about the monitors that are throughout the plant, they can just kind of look up and be like, oh, that exercise or that stretch might help me out. So just, again, working with the supervisors and the safety team. A lot of times they do stuff without like my knowledge, but again, I'm new, so I have to kind of voice to say, hey, I'm here to help you guys, include me in on this stuff. So yeah.
Well, that sounds good. Well, it might be good for, if you can meet with them and introduce yourself and tell them how you can bring value, and give them examples of where you've seen some of these gaps occur and how you could help them. I think the better we are at communicating what our value is to help them, and take some of the burden off of them as well. So if they picked a new drill and they didn't involve you, and then you go out and you see the drill being used and it's being used improperly, you can help avoid that, So just something to think about around there. Anybody else want to make some suggestions or comments?
I'll jump in for a second. Again, I'm thinking about my experience as a physical therapist working in industry, with training in job analysis and training in writing, what we call ergonomic opportunity reports. I think that as rehab professionals, we bring such a unique body of knowledge forward to employers that to us is second nature, and we forget that it's not second nature to safety professionals, human resource professionals, supervisors, employees, et cetera. And that is the ability to recognize when individuals are doing things that have a relationship to injuries or potential injuries. And as such, that particular body of knowledge is unique.
Yeah.
And that we need to remember that we possess this unique body of knowledge, that when we integrate with our safety professionals and even ergonomists that you may come across that work in the various settings that you come into, that we bring a perspective that is quite unique. And sometimes that ability, that early intervention or first aid level of intervention that we've circled around a little bit, is the ability to recognize things before they may need an engineering solution. So I'll leave it over to Alison with that thought.
Yeah, so this is pretty much root causation. And we can look for awkward and non-neutral postures, exertional forces, risk, repetition. We can literally go back and identify where that problem is coming from, so that not just that individual, but everyone who's doing the same task has the same exposure, and making sure that message is clear to the employer. So, Callie, how are you doing on your documentation? Are you analyzing these jobs and documenting your suggestions, or is it mostly observational and interaction with just individuals at a time?
Right now it's just observation, but soon I will be doing more of the DSI training and get more involved with we're going to do a complete overhaul of each department to help improve the pre-employment test, because the current one is lacking a lot of individuality with the different departments. Basically, everybody gets thrown through the same exact thing, and it's not exactly department related. So it's like, oh, hey, you're going to be working paint line, but there's only one task out of 15 that really relates to that specific job. So yeah, it's just getting rounding in the shop to get more familiar with what each job has to do. Very foreign type stuff, because it's like, oh, what is PEMing? What is that? What do you do there? Or like, welding is welding. That, driving a forklift is driving a forklift. But there are certain duties like using a brake press. It's like, oh, what do you do there? So yeah, and each employee that I see is super helpful in explaining what they have to do in their job, but obviously them telling me when I'm in the clinic or in our office versus them telling me when I'm actually at their workstation, completely different. It's like, oh, that's what they're talking about. So
that's the thing about, doing these either ergonomic or job analysis, is the language of that employer and the lingo and the terms that they use and the abbreviations. You have to be very savvy. In just a short period of time, we have to figure out how to document demands, essential functions, the tools used, materials handled, tasks performed, in just a few hours, collecting that data and then synthesizing it into something that will make sense and be useful to the employer, so they can create pre-hire or post-offer, screening, or have an effective job description, or use it for ADA reasonable accommodation, or send it to a doctor. So, I have been doing job analysis before I was doing ergonomic analysis, and it's really, the only difference is that I quantify force, repetition, postural issues, and many other areas around that through being more objective, So yeah, once you get into that, it's going to really help you a lot to look for root causation and be able to explain things more descriptively to those that need to know. So I want to engage Christine here. You're patiently waiting. I want to ask you first, as a rehab professional, where do you see, what kind of education or certifications do you think are important to you and your staff to deliver these types of services? Because, some people have, CEAS, CEA, I'm a CPE, CIE, some are just have no credentials. How do you feel about that? What do your customers ask for? Is it important?
Well, from a customer standpoint, I think they trust our OSF brand in our communities that we serve. But we certainly can back that up. I think having some type of professional background is important, whether that be athletic training, physical occupational therapy, things that involve working with the body, kinesiology, understanding ergonomics of a task or a sport. But thinking of it from the standpoint of a PT who did not practice in the realm of industrial rehab, and now knowing what our clients are wanting, I do think having a model like DSI is important, because number one, it standardizes the product that we're selling and the product that we're providing. And number two, it ensures we level set the knowledge base that we're bringing. And it also, just for communication across the board, it can speak the same language. And I think eventually that's important in the industry, is to speak the same language.
Yes, I think those are great points. So standardization, level setting the knowledge, I think is important. Being trained in certain criteria,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then using a consistent and valid approach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we
it's value-based care too. If you're thinking about the shift and moving to a model like that across the industry of rehab, it's important to show your value to your competitors too.
Yeah. So we integrate that too at the Worksite International Ergonomics Training Academy. I find that you need to establish a baseline, and some of the, there's a lot of free content. I think someone mentioned this earlier on the internet. You can get a lot of these things for free, a lot of these checklists and things, but you want to make sure, like across with each of us, that if we have some reliability in what we're looking at and what we're seeing, and that's what DSI offers. We do the same thing. We have a network of certified ergonomic specialists delivering a consistent and valid approach. I think that being certified gives a level of credibility, that you can't assume that just because you went to school and you got your degree in PT doesn't mean that you necessarily know all the ins and outs of ergonomics. It is a science. It is taught at a master's level, but we have created now entry-level points to get into it. You don't have to go up to CPE level necessarily, but you should. I believe that it's important for our profession in rehab that we set ourselves apart by having the right credentials to deliver things to employers. So maybe Brian, can you comment about that? And maybe Sean?
Yeah, I think Sean can speak to it a little better than I can, but yeah.
Brian with an I, got any thoughts about that? Certification?
Yeah, I think the certification piece is really crucial. And one of my colleagues is certified professional for safe patient handling. I'm part of the BCPE as a certified professional ergonomist, and my other colleague is in the process of working towards that as well right now through the BCPE. So I think regionally, when you're working with business and industry, having that comparison within your region or your referral area, I think is good. And that's the same thing on a business model as selling some of your services. So when I'm approaching things from in working with the C-suite, having a medical background, having a work comp background, and having a human factors engineering background is helpful, because I can touch base with a lot of different players within their organization. And so depending on who I'm walking through certain parts of my conversation, I'm able to hit key touch points for different players within their organization. And that's just really been helpful from a C-suite standpoint, because they can then really see the value of what's being brought into the organization.
Good.
So I have a question for Brian and Alison, and that is, looking at larger groups in particular, like, you know, Sean and Christine with OSF, for example, how would you staff this? So, for instance, who in your staff need to be certified professional ergonomists or CEAs or what have you? I mean, how would you, in a large organization that's, and I'll put Tracy, your group at Advanced in there too, does everyone need that level of certification? Or if you're serving a large group, how might you see that working? You have therapists, you have athletic trainers, you have assistants, you know, how would you, what's your vision of how that might look?
Well, from my perspective, I don't think everyone needs to be a CPE unless you're going to do it full time and be 100% dedicated to ergonomics as a science, helping employers prevent and manage injuries. But I do feel that now, you know, there's the entry level programs that are available. And I think if people are just, depending on what your industries are serving, then your level of competency should match the diversity and the complexity that you're evaluating. So if you are evaluating office, then you should definitely be certified in office ergonomics, understand chairs, the science of sitting. If you're doing remote evals, I think you should be certified in that. If you are doing industrial analysis, then you should have both office and then the next level. You should know how to do NIOSH and use video analysis and work with, you know, either through continuing ed and then become certified at private label programs so that at least you get some validation from your peers. You know, as a, you know, and that's what I do as a provider, as a teacher in my academy. I mentor and coach everybody through our courses so that they, when they finish, they're producing a report that I have that looks like mine for consistency. They follow the same format, they follow the methodology, and they learn that. And I think you have to match the competency, because I think, you know, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome going on in this industry when you don't.
Brian?
Yeah, so I think it depends on where your practice is gonna kind of really be directed. And initially, 3 of the colleagues that I've worked with had a passion for business and industry or say patient handling, but they didn't have certification. And so what we did is just collaborated and said, okay, how are we going to design the best practice model associated? And what does that look like for office ergonomics? What does it look for safe patient handling? What does it look for industrial ergonomics? And so similar to what Alison talked about is you want to be able to provide the same external product to that employer and or whoever your customer is going to be. But it's at least to have part of your team to be able to have that level of certification. I think it's helpful from a marketing and a consultative standpoint, but also you're able to speak to business and industry differently, and not all people that are certified provide the same services, or maybe have potentially the same outcomes with folks, you know, because I think you know, there's also a level of emotional intelligence that if you can read a room well and you can interact with folks and create rapport, those folks are going to do extremely well working with business and industry. But I think at the end of the day, like Alison talked about, is really establish your preferred best practice and what does that look like, and let that be your driving force, depending whoever your customer is going to be at that point. And really create engagement with your customer, because that defines the direction that you're going to go. And I may approach things probably 5-6 different ways depending what my customer needs are. I already kind of know if I've got historical data and a risk factor assessment where I want to go, and actually where I want to take them, but my direction of how I get there is going to be different based on meeting that employer need and their normal course of business.
Yeah, I think it's very complex. It's just, we address a lot of the physical side of ergonomics and the traditional primary risk factors, but then there's the cognitive side of work, the human factors of work, software design, user design interfaces. We don't necessarily do that. And I think, being certified and having that a credential that defines a little bit better about what your competencies are is really helpful for you and helpful for those seeking services, and the other thing is, if you don't have it, don't be afraid to share what you're doing with someone who is qualified to give you feedback, so you can improve. And because what I've seen is that there's a lot of people doing ergonomics and injury prevention from, have like many different scope of practices. And I think to some extent, this is what commoditizes it and puts it at an hourly rate at times, when it really should be elevated much more to continuous improvement and performance, like I talked about earlier. I think that because that there's not this, we don't need a license and we don't really need to be certified. So it's become a little bit more commonplace. And I think that that's a disservice to us. And I think certifying is an important way to differentiate our value. Just like, we're working hard to preserve our licensing and our scope of practices. I think it does the same thing here. Any other thoughts? So we're coming into the last few minutes. Go ahead.
Right. We're coming up on 8 minutes, so I thought, just like you were thinking, Alison, a good time to open it up for maybe last minute questions or just a takeaway. If we don't have questions, maybe we can go around and just hear, kind of coming out of this meeting, what are some of your takeaways and what do you want to do next related to what you've learned in this 90-minute session with some really, really forward-thinking professionals? So questions first?
I do want to bring something forward that I've been thinking about a long time, and that is that I would love to see health insurance embrace the prevention model for employers. It's not just on the work comp side and then, because employers pay for this themselves, but being able to utilize like Blue Cross or, like during the pandemic for millions of people working from home, what if Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Anthem, Kaiser offered a preventive evaluation at home for home use? I don't know where we're at with that. I saw something on LinkedIn about a PT talking about we're not just movement specialists. We do so much more, right? But the problem is we define our boundaries. And here is where this is one area I think as the PT, as the ergonomist, and as the workplace specialist for performance and well-being, I would like to see us move in that direction. And that's another reason why I think certification levels are so important. How about Callie? You got some thoughts? Last minute thoughts?
No, it was definitely very helpful to kind of know and learn about all these other different entities and the other folks that have a lot of experience with all this stuff. But just definitely looking forward to learning more about ergonomics and all that goes into it.
You're just at the beginning. It's a wonderful journey. It's fascinating. I mean, I have the same passion I had 30 years ago and just keep pushing myself to learn more. I'm sure that Brian with an eye feels the same way. He has a rich depth. I know you went out to work comp and loss control, which is really fascinating. I like to work with loss control guys and insurers. they bring us in for, our ergonomics expertise. So how about you got some last minute thoughts there, Brian?
Yeah, I guess I always think about just being a continuous learner, and I'm pretty eclectic and really grabbing or capturing a lot of good information from a variety of folks, because there's so much experience from the group that's involved here, but as well as I think if probably the best way that from a networking standpoint, I do a lot of local, regional, and national public speaking at a variety of different conferences. And that's opened my eyes over the years to having a lot of great exposure to a lot of people in the industry. So, and it's also a great way to be able to get referrals into your practice, whatever that practice would be. And then also just by being able to network with folks has led me into different directions for continuing education and actually changing or enhancing my practice. So if you get the opportunity or the urge to start speaking in different capacities, I think it's a great way to network, but it's also a great way to learn. And I guess my greatest, some of my greatest teachers are my patients, as well as the folks in business and industry. And probably one of the greatest lessons I've learned is really early in my practice, I've had folks that came up to me and said, okay, how would you do this and how would you change this? I'm having a problem. And in some of the industries that I hadn't had experience, I said, I know how the body works. You're the professional and that know how your job works. I'm here to collaborate with you. And I ask the questions, what do you think? And I never stop asking those questions, because there's a lot you can learn from the employees that you're working with, because they're doing the job all day long and for months and years. And if we can just give them small direction, you're able to learn and then capture that for the next company and the next company and the next company. So they've just been great teachers. So I've always consistently asked that question day in and day out. What do you think? Yeah.
That's a great question, and it's so important to engage the employee in this process, and we get so much value from that, and then we can deliver that back to the employer. And it's funny how they'll listen to us sometimes, but they don't listen to their employees. But either way, we can be the messenger anytime. So, how about Sean and Christine? Any last thoughts, or Tracy?
Nope, I just appreciate the info.
Well, there's more ways. How about you, Sean?
Just to really appreciate the info. Going to definitely bring some things up to fellow mission partners about, especially the certification, and seeing if anybody's got an interest in that, because as far as I know, we don't have anybody that is certified. So that would be a great asset, I think, to our team.
Yes, that's great. If you need some more help, I'm sure Ginny and I can speak with you further on that. And, as a president and CEO of Worksite International, first I want to thank Ginny just personally and professionally for inviting me here today. I wanted to just, before I give you some final closing, Tracy, do you have any thoughts before we wrap up, or Nancy? I don't know if they're able to unmute. There you go.
Well, this is Nancy. I was muting, but I think listening is a great skill to think about. And I know we're all therapists or athletic trainers. And empathy, because sometimes we work with supervisors or people we might not agree with. So having that skill of empathy to be able to listen and, hopefully persuade them in a different way or a different way of looking at things. So, and wellness, I think being on site, that's a big plus for industry, is because sometimes we are that wellness person for work and non-work related and mental health. It's so huge. I think sometimes I feel more I'm doing mental health lately than I do the the physical side or just that combination. So those are my closing thoughts.
Thank you so much. Yep. Listening and empathy are all, skills that we bring as healthcare rehab professionals. So I see I wasn't monitoring the chat, so I appreciate that. I see, Tracy, you've asked, what kind of entry-level programs are there? So there are many. One thing I will do, I've done a lot of research and writing in my blog at Worksite International on certificate versus certification, and there is a difference between the two. And in my blogs, all you have to do is look at worksiteinternational.com. I will put that in the link here. Let me go ahead and pull that up right now for you guys. There is, I have an article, the most popular ergonomic certificates and certification courses in the marketplace. And this really explains it very well, as well as the hierarchy of private label credentialing versus national nonprofit board certification. And I think anyone in this roundtable group and anyone who's listening, you really need to do your due diligence and understand the certificate, the ergonomics training marketplace. We're not talking about a master's degree or in engineering or HFE. We're talking about continuing education and the differences between the private label business credentials and the national nonprofits. And the main differential is the private labels will train you and certify you either in open source resources or like my program, which is a license to use our system for a consistent and valid approach, all the way up to like the national nonprofits, which you bring your expertise to them and you validate you are an expert with them. They don't train you. So that's the hierarchy here is you learn at continuing ed, you apply it, and then you test and apply with testimonials and examples of work to get to your national credential. That's the best you can do. And so that resource should be helpful to you, Tracy. Okay. Any other thought? Does that help? Okay, good. Jeannie.
Okay. Alison, golly, thank you. This has been most excellent. Thank you for your guidance, and everybody, thank you for being here and for sharing your expertise. I think we all have takeaways from our 90 minutes that we spent together. So I will be putting out a little survey just asking for your impression of these types of roundtable talks, and also asking you some more questions about what DSI can do to support you as you move forward with, developing more in ergonomics. So we've got more to come in communicating with each other where it is relative to ergonomics as a part of the work that we're all doing to support our employers that we work with in the community and those that we work with internally. So thank you, everybody. Go on and have a great evening. Happy fall. Check out DSI's new website, by the way. If you go to DSIWorkSolutions.com, you will get rerouted to our new website. That is as of today. So take a look and let me know, drop me a note and let me know what you think. So again, everybody, thank you.
I put a little note in the chat also, my email. And we have a networking membership program, WI Network, and that's kind of new. And we have expert office hours once a month, kind of like this, but it's a presentation from an ergonomist in either nationally or internationally will present on a topic. And I always do our first meeting. Your first meeting is free. So like Brian mentioned with an I, continuing ed is critical and it's hard to get. And so this is a great way to do that. So please reach out. I've really enjoyed working with everybody today and getting to know you all better. And kudos to all the hard work and all that you have achieved and continue to achieve to help America's workforce, right?
All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you, Jenny. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Allison.
Bye, everybody.
So roundtables like this are so powerful. When you bring together so much experience, everybody walks away with a piece of new knowledge or new perspective that's going to help us as we move forward. So we hope you'll join us for future roundtables and continue to look to DSI for new information as well as training in the concepts that we teach. And do take a look at us at dsiworksolutions.net. Thank you.